In this video, we'll take a deep dive into the multiply blend mode. If you remember nothing else from this video, just remember that multiply will make your photo darker. That's the main thing to remember, but of course there's much more to it than just that. Now, before we dive into multiply, I want to take a look at an even simpler blend mode that's related to multiply, and that's the darken blend mode. To see how this works, first I'm going to add a fill layer to our image, just like how we did in the last video. For this fill layer, I'm going to make the layer 50% gray. Basically what that means is over here where you can see the values, I want the luminosity value to be 50, and you can adjust this by going up and down on this side of the color wheel. Now we can take a look at the darken blend mode. So I'll click here and then change it to darken. This blend mode is the opposite of the lighten blend mode, which we learned about in the last video. So instead of keeping the brightest pixels from the base layer and the blend layer, it will keep the darkest pixels from each layer. So if I turn this layer on and off, you can see that gray is being added to the sky, her skin, and sunny parts of the grass. That's because 50% gray is darker than those bright areas. On the other hand, her black shirt is completely unaffected by this blend layer because black is darker than gray. So the resulting image is only the darkest pixels from each layer. Okay, knowing that, now let's take a look at the multiply blend mode. With this blend mode, you can see that everything has become darker, even the black shirt. That's because multiply combines the darknesses from both layers. So if I make the fill layer darker, then the resulting image will become even darker. And if I make the fill layer lighter, then the resulting image becomes less dark than before, but it's still darker than the original photo. Here's the before, and here it is, slightly darker. So why is that? If I change the fill layer's blend mode back to normal, you can see that this is a pretty light shade of gray. Even though it's such a light color, the resulting image still becomes darker when we use the multiply blend mode. So why is that? What's the math behind that? Well, get ready because we're about to learn the secret formula for the multiply blend mode. Drum roll, please. And here it is! Look at that beautiful equation! Using this equation, the multiply blend mode will take the color value of the base layer and then divide that by 255. Then it will multiply that by the blend layer's color value divided by 255, and then multiply the whole thing by 255. That will give you the new color value for each pixel in your resulting image. So now that I've told you what the secret formula is, I'm sure you know exactly how the multiply blend mode works. Well, not really. Unless you're an even bigger affinity nerd than I am, this formula probably doesn't mean anything to you. And that's totally fine. I've been using Affinity for nearly a decade, and I've never needed to use this specific formula. In fact, the main reason I'm showing you this is so that you can see that it's not important to understand the math behind every blend mode. I've watched videos where people explain the math of each and every blend mode, and honestly, knowing these equations just isn't important. What is important is knowing the general principle of what a blend mode is doing, and then when/why you would want to use each one. So knowing that, let's learn the general principle of how multiply works, and then we can see it in practice. To understand multiply, I like to think of this simple equation. In this equation, you just combine the darkness from the base layer with the darkness from the blend layer. And really, that's all you need to know. Just remember that multiply works by adding the darkness from each layer. Okay, now let's jump back into Affinity and see how multiply works on a practical level. This gray fill layer isn't very dark, but it does have a little darkness to it. So when I change the blend mode to multiply, then that little bit of darkness is added to the photo beneath it. And if I make the fill layer even darker, then more darkness is added to the photo, since the fill layer has more darkness to add to the equation. Because the darkness from each layer is being added together, using multiply will almost always result in a darker image. Almost always. There are two exceptions to that, and those are when pure white or pure black are involved. To see what I mean, let's make this fill layer totally white by bringing it to this corner down here. Now if I turn this layer on and off, you can see that nothing is happening. That's because the color white has zero darkness in it, so it has no darkness to add to the equation. To see a simple example of why this is important, I'll place another photo into this image. So I'll go to the top of the screen to File, and then down to Place. I'm going to add this black heart image to our document. Then I'll just click and drag to add it in. In this example, I want to add this black heart to the main photo, but I don't want to include the white background that's surrounding it. Lucky for us, this is super easy to do with the multiply blend mode. So with this layer selected, I'll just change this to multiply. Now the heart is all that's left because white becomes invisible when you use multiply. Isn't that cool? In addition to that, now that we've added this black heart, we can also see how multiply works with pure black. I mentioned before that multiply almost always makes things darker because it will combine darknesses from your blend layer and the base layer. But I want you to pay attention to the heart as we change the blend mode. I'll set the blend mode back to normal, so this is how it looked before, and then back to multiply. I'll do this a couple of times and ask you, does using multiply make the heart any darker than it already was? You can probably see that the answer is no. It looks exactly the same. That's because black is already 100% dark, and you can't get any darker than 100% dark, so it will look the same. So, when you use multiply on black, it just stays black because black is already as dark as it comes. Okay, now let's see another example of multiply by using another image from the exercise files. I'll go to File, and then down to Place. And this time I'll select this gray heart image. I'll click and drag to place this image. Okay, before I change the blend mode, I want you to try to figure out what will happen. What will happen to the gray heart when we use multiply? And what will happen to the white that's surrounding the heart? Okay, you have your guess? Let's go ahead and change the blend mode and see what happens. Once again, the white background has been removed. And this time, the gray heart has become much darker because its darkness is being combined with the darkness of her hair. Hopefully that wasn't too surprising for you, but now let me ask you a trickier question. What would happen if I moved the gray heart up here in this bright area. The sky is so bright that it's actually pure white, and we've already learned that white has no darkness in it, so what will it do to the gray heart? Well, let's move the heart up here and see what happens. To more clearly see what's happening, we can jump back and forth between the normal and multiply blend mode. As you can see, the gray heart looks exactly the same as the original image. Remember, multiply will add the darkness from each of these layers together. Since the white sky has no darkness, 0 is being added to the darkness of the gray heart. Anything plus 0 will just return to whatever it was before. That's why the heart looks exactly the same. Okay, now I have one final question for you. What will happen to this gray heart if I move it on top of the black heart? Remember, black is already 100% dark, so what will happen if we add gray to it? Are you ready? Okay, let's see what happens. And just like that, the gray heart is gone. I know that might look a little strange, but mathematically it makes sense. If you add any amount of darkness to black, then it will still be black. Since the gray heart is having its darkness combined with the black, it's also become black, which is why you can't see it here, even though this layer is on top of the black heart. And to finish this video, I just want to mention that everything we've been learning about applies to color as well. To see this, I'll add a red fill layer. I'll go to Layer, and then New Fill Layer. I'll change the color to red, and then I'll set its blend mode to Multiply. Now the entire photo has become darker, because the darkness from the red is being combined with the darkness of the original photo. But you'll notice that the black heart still looks the same. As we learned, that's because black is already 100% dark, so adding any darkness from the red color won't change it. Alright, and with that, you are now a master of the multiply blend mode. Nice job! I know that was a lot to take in, but don't worry, we'll see how to use multiply in some more practical situations throughout the course. But for now, we can go ahead and move on to the next video and learn about another important blend mode, the screen blend mode.